Welcome to the new 4X strategy game, Millennia. In this video I hope to provide an easily digestible beginner's guide, of course focused on the early game, and I won't muck about. Let's jump straight in. Starting off with the game setup, I personally like to reduce the size a little bit, and I'd recommend it to you too, at least if it's your first game. Map type can also be changed, take note, and of course difficulty. The main gameplay function here is this bar. This is our starting bonus, regional bonus, game-wide discount. This is our trait, if you will. It doesn't matter at all who you pick to look like aesthetically. This is the trait that matters, and you can change it, so don't stress. I've found that a lot of them aren't necessarily that impactful, especially as you move through to age 2 in particular. You can never go too wrong with things like improvement points or production to get buildings and tile improvements online, and of course, generally good stuff like food. So, starting out, a couple of things we want to do at the beginning. We have two sort of warrior-like units, these warbands. As I say, we don't start with a scout, so we're going to have to use them to get exploring. We may run into barbarians, and we might need to keep them close-ish for defense. The other important thing to look at, of course, are these resources. Hello, beautiful. I like to start with a humble scout. Just one. Generally, that's about enough. We can get more with our domain experience, and then move into some of the buildings to produce that domain experience or more broader benefits for my city. But a better way to help this city grow will be to start improving its tiles. At the moment, we have one population, and so the dudes foraging in this grassland, 2 food. We're producing no goods. That's not good enough. So what we can do, initially, just the hunting camp will probably be available. Pastures will be useful too once we can start to stack some of these points. For now though, let me improve a tile with a hunting camp. Because I have this resource that I can build it on top of, the deer, we can also get bone on top of the meat that we would have got. And that means that Hamburg is already producing 2 goods, one of them to help us grow our population. Don't forget you can track your city growth here, and we'll need more population to keep growing and unlocking stuff, so it's always good to get some food. And we're also getting bones, just a wealth resource, perhaps less impactful early on. I wouldn't just beeline for it, but it's a nice benefit. And one of the other benefits to getting a scout online, as well as just generally looking around, are these tribal camps. A minor, peaceful encampment that will provide us with one-time boosts, sometimes unlocking domain experience and new domains, other times city improvements, or a whopping 5 knowledge. Heyo! If you can get a knowledge boost early like that, you should generally take it. Getting tech online fast is super good. In this case now I'm sort of looking at, do I want food to grow, or do I want to get my research building? Am I ready to quite build that yet? Around the 5th turn, you'll also get your cultural ability for the first time. Cities produce a yield called culture, and we can use that depending on which domains we have unlocked for one-off abilities. Create Town is one you'll come back to again and again and again, turning a region, in this case with the capital city of Hamburg, into a more sprawling region, leveling it up. More wealth, influence. Ultimately, it will also help our borders expand. So if I place a town down here, the region has now leveled up, as you can see, to region level 2. Nice. This will help us support more population and all of the associated yields that go with it. It'll also help expand our borders in a certain direction. So reaching out here will, over time, grab these 2 resources and some flat land for me to build more tile improvements on. Building a scout early on, or perhaps using your exploration power, this one here, to summon them in, very good, is beneficial to us because we can start discovering not just the map, obviously, because they have better movement and visibility, but also by using this Discover Landmark, we can start discovering and claiming these for ourselves, earning more exploration points, and ultimately spawning more scouts. It's very important to keep on top of your population and how many tiles, resources, and stuff that you have improved, because you want to have this capital city running as efficiently as you can. Likewise, your improvement points down the bottom here can tick away, sometimes maybe without you even noticing. To use them, you can click on a tile, and that'll tell you all of the relevant improvements you can build on it, or, of course, open up this menu, and then you get this nice overview seeing all of the different places you could build. Now, the clay pit is quite special. The clay pit, let me build one here, for example, provides a city with extra production, and it provides us with an extra improvement point per turn, doubling our yield per turn. Oh, finding those tribal huts and getting knowledge out of them is just game changing. I now have 3 technologies unlocked. I can come back and get the others in a future age if I want to. They'll be a little bit cheaper. I could take them now. Or I could choose to research the next age. In this case, there's one choice. Usually there'll be 3, perhaps 4 even. But it's early days. So let's put it up here as my research project. While I've been out gallivanting around exploring on my scouts, I've decided to send some military units back home, and it looks like it's just as well. You need to take real care when you're defending your cities. You'll get some dudes, some city militia, perhaps to come out and help. But if a barbarian or an enemy unit so much as walks on this tile, they can raise the town. I'll lose all of the tiles that it connects. Other very early abilities to be aware of inside of the warfare domain, which you'll easily get. You can start to spawn free units, helpful for that defense we were just talking about. Though perhaps more useful, of course, is this first government one, spawning a settler. It'll allow us to establish a new, not city that we'll fully control, but a vassalized territory, which we can choose to integrate in. Because of my focus on production and improvement points early on, Hamburg is struggling to meet its needs. A small city only has a need of food. As you advance, things like sanitation will also become needs. But it's important to keep on top of them, otherwise we won't grow, in fact we'll shrink, not just because we don't have food. People will also get a little bit unhappy with us. Not a massive deal early, but it will become one. Luckily, the groundwork will pay off, and in this case we can use our improvement points to build the researched farm building. This will provide 4 food to the city, surging its needs up. Not quite at the perfect 200%, which is ideally where we want to be, but good enough at least. And boom, as soon as any player researches through, the world is pulled through. In this case it was me, Germany, and welcome to the Age of Bronze, and each age presents its own sort of special conditions. So something to be aware of, barbarian warlords may appear, much stronger units. Every second age you unlock national spirits, and when I was talking in the introduction about the trait being relatively minor, it's because we get access to so much more through these trees. Adopt a tree first and you'll get a little bit of bonus XP, but generally I'd recommend actually looking at the tree itself and seeing what do you want. They align with the domains, so there's some sort of grander strategy element at play here too, about piecing together different spirits each time you can. But more importantly, if we jump in and take a look, they also provide unique units, unique buildings, improvements, and special resources too, like limestone here, for example. There's maybe a slight edge benefit in grabbing engineering and diplomacy at this early stage because I don't have those domains unlocked yet, and grabbing these would do it, though I'm already generating experience inside of something like exploration. So it's really about playing off that, and also what you've got. Obviously you wouldn't want seafarers if you weren't built along the sea. It's probably not going to be that useful for me regardless. The burial mound and mound builders is a way to get culture fast, which can really enable growth, because the number of cities you have will reduce the amount of culture you get per turn. So if you want to go out really wide and have lots of cities in your control, this is a great way to escalate it early. The thing to really pay attention to is if you want to set the stage, now's the time to do it. You can move through to the standard Age of Iron, 3 techs, they all have a technology requirement, or something a bit more special, Age of Heroes, we need to find 3 landmarks, or Age of Blood, if we kill more than 6 enemy units during this age, we will be forced to choose this option. So bear that in mind, there are some big ramifications based on what you do on the map. In my opinion, everything except maybe shipbuilding, depending on your map, is incredibly useful. Mining is great for our production and engineering experience. Because I've chosen to go down the engineering route with God King, that makes me put more of an emphasis on mining, so that I can get engineering XP and we can actually start to unlock its benefits. In this stage of the game, we also access our first government type. In this case, it's a tribal government, and we can spend our domain experience on pretty nice little boosts. Extra food, extra knowledge, extra innovation, improvement points. It's all good stuff. It's all, at least early on, fairly cheap. You might want to surge for that knowledge in particular to beat out your foes. Something else that I'd like to point out, at the moment I'm only getting +2 improvement points, yet earlier we built it up to +3, so what's going on here? Well, if we jump into the city, you can see that actually only 1 is being worked, 1 out of 2 possible options. And so if I add an extra worker here, removing them from another tile, which is of course why we need more and more people, that will lift me back up to my +3, but the city won't grow as quickly. So there's a real need to grab people. In this case, unfortunately, it's because I left myself undefended, and a relatively strong barbarian has come in, as we talked about earlier, and decided to pillage things. And just like that, because I let my guard down, barbarian comes out of nowhere, sweeps in, Hamburg ruined. I'd like to say I did that on purpose as a lesson for this video. I'm not going to say anything. And after an absolutely brutal rampage by the newly powerful barbarians, Hamburg is left just destroyed. Absolutely destroyed. We can use improvement points to rebuild tiles that are left within our land. However, towns will require a little bit more than that. Inside of the engineering domain, we're going to have to rebuild ruined town. Bit of a yikes, definitely recoverable though. As well as upgrading our government, very strong impacts of course the more you move through the tree, and spawning settlers, or potentially raising armies, we of course also use this XP, government XP, to integrate our vassals. Doing so, as you can see, will change my cultural upkeep from 0 to -3, so it's going to cost me culture per turn. However, by integrating this into my empire, I now have control over it just like we do at Hamburg, allowing us to, of course, build more buildings and start to generate more domain XP, more knowledge, more goods. Very strong. Now is also a good time to consider this little flag up in the top right, the diplomacy menu. You can click on a player and interact with them. In this case, the Aztecs have decided that they don't want to be neutral, and they're going to tolerate basically fights in neutral areas of the map. We could declare war against them, try and convince them to come back around. If you send an envoy and start to build up some diplomatic relations, maybe an alliance, you'll also get more options. Sending gift, improving relations, that kind of stuff. And with the change of that turn, the map starts to look a little bit different. And that's because another player has bet me to it and taken us through to the next age, the Jumbites. Who made them? Anyway, thankfully they chose the Age of Heroes, a special age, one of likely many that you'll run into inside of Millennia. In this case, it provides unique hero units that spawn on our homeland. Upgrading Hamburg a little bit by adding a dwelling. As you can see, it also has a need for housing now, so we should try and keep on top of all of those. However, basically anybody can build a clay pit and then build a kiln. So let's do that. Plop it down on that tile there, and now we have a more advanced supply chain, with the clay pit producing 1 clay, and that 1 clay then makes its way to the kiln, where it's converted into 1 brick, doubling its yield, up to 2 production and 2 improvement points. And you can see that inside of the goods screen. You can see that the clay's been grayed out, no longer getting the direct benefit from that because instead we've converted it into bricks. As I mentioned in the introduction, combat is all about composing an army. This one looks like it's probably missing some ranged support, but otherwise fairly strong and certainly ready for a fight at 111 army power compared to just 51 of my opponent. You can see the game will always provide you with an accurate prediction of the outcome of the fight before you jump in. Units can also be promoted to leaders using warfare experience, providing additional tactics to an army, though potentially weakening it. And if you're generating a lot of this warfare domain experience, then you can start to really get an edge over your opponent. Another way to twist combat into your favor in Millennia, because we don't have manual control over the units. Forced March, for example, very useful because you can use it in enemy territory to gain another move, another march, or indeed another attack. So if you've weakened an army like I have here, they have basically no morale and they're on relatively low health, then we can just jump in and take them down. Without the morale, they won't look to fight back, and providing we have enough actions, we'll be able to destroy the units. In that case, you can see I didn't quite get it. They ran out of morale and ran away before I could take them down. And now, I'm looking a little bit surrounded. Buildings like the encampment will also play a big role in shaping your army, not only by providing warfare experience, as you can see, but also extra combat experience, leveling up our units ahead of time. In neutral or friendly territory, we can use the reinforcements domain power. You can see the health bars of these units down here surge back up to full. Very strong, especially because you can use it in neutral territory and then bounce straight back in like this. I don't know, maybe to do a little bit of pillaging, for example. Destroying both the outposts, but also more importantly, as I had happened to me earlier, towns, is a great way to quickly cripple enemy cities. Very strong, especially if you're just looking to do damage, rather than maybe eventually take the city in for yourself. It depends how close the fight is, I suppose. Destroying a town will also provide you with just a little bit of wealth to do with its level and size. Honestly, not a huge takeaway. The big takeaway here is that the more powerful army, of course, came out on top. We destroyed their town and just blew a massive hole, not only in the side of their city, but also, as I say, in their economy. Some terrain modifiers will also start to come into play. You won't see a lot of them necessarily early on, but forest, for example, is one defense adjusting modifier. Other combat modifiers include just generally being on the defensive, and also you can start to see the leader effects play out, though of course it's early days. They haven't quite had an opportunity to build up a lot of their tactics. Taking down enemy cities is very hard. Forewarning, they will have good defense, they will have militia units, and if they're at least reasonably competent, they'll probably have some normal ones. This means that a standard army that you're walking around with like this one is going to have a hard time. I'd suggest sending multiple armies or of course out-teching your opponent. And seeing as we're in the age of heroes, it probably makes sense to end this video in the final age, for this one of course, with the heroes themselves. Firstly, they are very strong units, right? 3 tactics, loads of reasonable amount of health and morale, but heaps of attack and defense, at least for the relatively early stage. They can hold their own. They also, as I mentioned earlier, have this quest function, which also plays out a bit later on with different units, more exploratory kind of explorers. But here we see some bonus warfare, combat experience, and of course there are plenty more to discover and uncover as they appear across the map when an empire moves through. Thank you so much for joining me in this hopefully digestible early beginner's guide for Millennia. Do let me know how much you dislike the graphics in the comments below. I'll see you next time.